All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Bugwatch. I am your host, Swissley, aka Davey, aka whatever you want, and I am joined by the wonderful JP today. How are you doing, JP?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm very good. Very good. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be going through the strongest, the most powerful 5 O's, unbeatens, 4 O's list. Oh, there's my voice again. In the background. The best list.
You didn't mute yourself. You didn't mute
myself.
it, did you?
Such a dickhead. The strongest lists out there for Tyranids at the moment. So you know what? That means a very short show because we, as the Tyranid community, it's been a rough couple of weeks, hasn't it, John?
Oh yes. I did not enjoy reading through the the Meta Monday article from today for the weekend. It did not make for good reading.
No, I think for the last 2 weeks we were 43%, and for last week, John, it was
31. We
Now-
only got beaten by Deathwatch.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. So to give you some caveats to that, there's not been tons of events in that time. There's only been maybe 2 enormous GTs in that time, and we actually had some Tyranid players do quite well, and we're going to talk about those 2 lists. As you can tell by the title of this video, they were not Invasion Fleet, they were not Vanguard Onslaught, they were in fact Assimilation Swarm, and believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, a Crusher Stampede list. So very exciting, very exciting. We're also going to go through a little bit of data. Again, just a caveat that it is a very small data set. So, it's not, I wouldn't take it too literally. I wouldn't base my life plan around it. I wouldn't buy a pension based on it. But what I would say is it's quite interesting reading for the time being. So, without further ado, let's get the screen up.
I did bring the most important thing to this stream today. I brought my codex with me because I can't tell you half the rules for 2 of those detachments, so I'm definitely going to be doing some reading while we go through.
I was going to say, you must have opened those pages of Assimilation Swarm and Crusher Stampede and be like, oh, it's like a new book.
Yes, smell of fresh paper.
Absolutely.
But in the nicest way, how many of us actually do use the codex? But I like it. It's useful to read from.
Just sell me the app access, GW. Please, just do it. Just do it. All right, there we go. Or should we do this one? There we go. Let's do that. Nice. All right. Let's just check the old comments. Yes, let's go, Bug Bros. Big fan of that. I'm going to put that on the screen. Thank you, MH. James Ferrier Mooney, here we go. Thanks very much. Assimilation is my favourite detachment. Can't wait to see this, says Frederick Bobal. Sorry if I've absolutely massacred that name. Question, would you collaborate with Craig from Maelstrom Gaming Studios? Yes, I absolutely would love to collaborate with Craig. He's a great lad. I love his content. I disagree with the majority of his takes, and I think that's why we would have great chemistry and content together. So yes, absolutely would do that. Starts clacking claws together. Yes, not is it clambering claws? The orc dread mob stratagem. Clinking claws or something. But yeah, anyway, that was a crap joke. We've got JP has cats. Do you have cats, JP?
Yes, we have 2 cats. They don't really want to come around at the moment. So if one of them reappears, I'll try and grab them. But for the moment, they've decided other things are better.
Fair. And only the best detachments are allowed to win. Clearly, from Michael DLT. Well, best is a strong word. I mean, I won't lie. The title of this stream is or the screenshot for the thumbnail.
I found a cat.
Well, there's a cat. It's kind of misleading because they're smashing it. Well, they're kind of smashing it.
You found a cat.
Hey,
my life is
on
fulfilled.
stream once, man. We'll get banned off YouTube. So cool. So we're going to quickly have a spruce through the data set just to see what's going on. Boom. All right. So post Dataslate update. I've just pulled a bit of information here to give you an idea of what's happening in the very limited amount of data, caveat again, that we're seeing. So on the left hand side, you have 2 bar charts, percentage bar charts. So this is games won before the data slate, and the number of games played, number of players is 225. So 0 wins, 10%, 11% of those guys had 0 wins. I salute you. You're my hero. I just hope you're having a fun time. You're enjoying what you're doing. And then 25% on 1 win. That's a lot. That's 25% is a lot of people winning one game. 2 wins, 32%. That's also significant. Now you can imagine the majority of players fit within 2 and 3 wins, because that's the majority of where a lot of players place, right? Makes total sense. So 32% in 2 wins, 21% in 3 wins, 9% in 4 wins, and 2 people going 5-0. So high five to them. Or 2% rather. So pretty strong. Well, not pretty strong. You know, it got us where we were, which was like 43% win rate. Okay, so and you can see that here with the majority of people actually having a negative amount of games won at a GT. Now let's have a look at post Dataslate. We've got 18 players, and we've got a lot of people at 3 wins, which is fair enough. So 1 in 2 people win 3 games with Tyranids at the moment. And then we have 11% at 4 wins, but none at 5-0. Obviously, none of the players have gone undefeated at a GT so far in the last 2 weeks. So yeah, it's a weird one, because yes, the score's improved because we've gone up, I think, like 2 percentage points in our win rate.
Something like that, yep.
But that's just because we've got a lot of people winning 3 games. It's not because we're suddenly in the ascendancy. We're going to win. We're going to become the new meta. No, it's not. It's because a lot more of our 2-win games have become 2-win players has become 3-win players.
Yes.
Which,
apart from last weekend,
which was a poor show. But you know, I also would say, JP, that like the biggest event was not last weekend.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
This weekend it was a lot of like, because I was looking through like 25-man GTs.
Yeah. They're your smaller local stores. Just putting one on, like we'll see them pop up constantly. Like the majority of events, you have to bear in mind, are only sort of 30 to sort of 20 to 50 players. Like it's interesting. Yeah. Like I think one of the things that always stands out bizarrely is like if you watch War Games live, like he's only covered, like majority of the events he covers are only like 30, 40 man events. They're not like these big majors and stuff. Like a lot of the events he covers are actually quite small.
He gets the camera angle, doesn't he? They always look enormous.
They always look massive, but and he does do a lot of the big events, but a number of the ones he do are also sort of smaller ones. Like you'll go in and watch them, and they're in a store, as an example, and then you've only got sort of 30 or 40 people. But like these stores in America are obviously massive compared to the stuff we have here in the UK. In comparison, it's like really well spaced out. But it's like we do need to remember that the majority of events that exist are not these big super majors and majors. Like the majority of events I go to are major and super major level. That's purely because of my life circumstances that it facilitates that better than going to local ones. But the majority of events are actually a lot smaller than you think. So actually going to like these numbers are actually quite good.
I'm slightly different to John. If someone puts a tablecloth on a table, I start playing Warhammer. Like I am game for any event. This weekend coming up, I've got 2 RTTs, one on the Saturday, one on the Sunday. I'm TOing the one on the Sunday, to be fair.
Ooh.
But I 100% I'm playing in it.
You've got to make up the numbers, right?
Yeah, but also there's 2 people who are willing to drop out before I do, so we'll see how that goes. So yeah. So that's really interesting. We're seeing a lot more players get to 3 wins, which, you know, out of the 18, right? So it's not loads of numbers, but we're getting some information. And then in terms of where people are going, and we saw this at the last data slate, we see people move away from invasion. Now this generally is a temporary thing. We find that people will go away from invasion and then go, oh dear, I remember what lethal hits on my entire army was like. I'm going to go back to that. So we see at the moment, so pre data slate, we saw 4% Crusher, 12% Vanguard, 1% Assimilation Swarm, 13% Synaptic, and 60% of players were on Invasion, with 10% on Unending. So the big changes are that essentially everyone, with the exception of I think it's Vanguard, has grown. It's grown in player participation rate, right? Except for Invasion, obviously, and Vanguard. So really interesting. I think that's because a lot of people have played Vanguard. A lot of people have they've experienced it, or they've had a couple of games with it because let's be fair, it's the coolest sounding detachment. But now that a Psychophage has become 95 points, people have suddenly got excited about Assimilation Swarm. We see people go back to Synaptic so that they can realise it's pretty bad and go back to Invasion Fleet. But
Yep.
we also see an unending increase, just marginally. Again, we're talking tiny numbers here, but really interesting that those are all seeing more players. Cool. And then what I did was here, I pulled the faction. So, what percentage of the data of the player base since the data slate, and what the most played factions essentially since the data slate. And then I've also looked at our pre-data slate win rate against those factions, so that you can say, oh wow, these are going to be the top 5 factions, top 5 played factions, not win rate, to be clear. And then this
Very
is
hot
how we
take
perform
there.
against them.
I'll give you some hot takes on that one. I'm very curious. It's really good though.
Yeah, I mean, so don't get me wrong, World Eaters aren't going to be a top meta army, but they were the 4th most taken army
Yes.
in the last 2 weeks.
I can believe it. A lot of people own it. It's a very accessible army. It's made out of 3 kits, 3 or 4 kits, but it's very easy to get hold of because there's no like big, you don't. I'm sure you'll agree with me, Dave. It's built out of about 3 boxes of
No, I can speak to experience here, right? Because I literally bought the Christmas kit with Angron in it.
Yeah.
Oh no, sorry, I actually bought a set. No, I did buy that. Yeah, I bought that, and then I bought some second-hand stuff, and I had an army. Job done.
Yeah, and that's no negative. That's a real positive selling point for World Eaters. It's incredibly accessible as an army. It was one of the reasons that like Custodes has always been a super accessible army because it's not a huge amount of money because you're basically investing into troop models plus a big monster. So it just kind of generally keep the price down a little bit more, I found, with those sorts of armies. And generally because it has so few data sheets, you're not really got that much variation on a build.
Yeah.
So like
100%.
you invest in 18 8-bound and you're probably going to play an army with 18 8-bound until the codex drops and you might get a few more units. It's the same with Votan as well. Hugely successful army because it's focused around a very finite number of data sheets. So any any changes in your data slate, generally you already have the models because it's your collection, whereas Tyranids and Space Marines, I think Space Marines is another one where the range is so big now that any dynamic changes, especially what we saw, not this data sheet, but like earlier iterations when you go from like the index to the codex, you saw bigger shifts there because like the word big changes in it there, and it's suddenly like, oh, hang on a minute, I don't actually own all these models, so it takes a bit of time for the whole dynamic to catch up, whereas something like World Eaters, I'm not surprised is the 4th most played armies because it's fun and hugely accessible.
Yeah, it's definitely fun. As it's my second army at the moment, and I just find it hilarious to play. It's good fun. So let's have a look at this slide then. So we've got Orcs. 7% of the player population in the last 2 weeks were playing Orcs. Number 1 faction, which I think is fantastic. Last data slate, or the previous data slate, we had a 50% win rate into them, which is really, really cool. Obviously, they're going to have loads more rules, loads more things going on, things that people are going to tell you are broken, and like it's hit and miss really from what I can see so far. I'm very excited to see what I suppose Green Tide looks like and how that matchup goes. But yeah, we'll see. Hopefully, I'll play them this weekend. It's interesting though. I think that the Green Tide menace that people are kind of considering is really going to impact our Swarm players, because if you can kill loads of toughness 5, 5-up invuln, rerolling save orcs, you can definitely kill a bunch of termagants or gargoyles.
Yeah, it's interesting. So for me, the potential orc menace of Green Tide is actually really bad for the Tau Codex and for us. The Tau Codex, so this is the Kroot horde, effectively. It's trying to play this horde meta. It's 120 Kroot carnivores plus peripheral attachments, plus a couple of plasma or whatever crisis teams. The scary thing for all of that, if you compare that to Swarm, like Swarm doesn't have any of the defensive stats that the Green Tide and the Crew have. Like the Crew have army-wide stealth, I believe, is one of the rules they get. They get a huge amount of like defensive. I can't remember exactly. People were talking about it in the thing, and I think they've got some sort of extra defensive mechanic. Orcs have toughness 5 and a 5-up invuln. Swarm have I move closer to you when you shoot me.
We can regen a unit, but so can
can.
the Crew, I suppose. I think they've got an ability to do it.
I think the Crew can. But it's interesting how, and like you say, I think it's massively supporting into that, where Unending Swarm is going to have to be a lot more reliant on that regenerating of stuff, because rather than having to focus on killing like Custodes and Wraiths and tanks, you're now having to focus on killing 120 Orc Boys, 120 Crew, dot army, potentially more Accursed Cultists coming back. We'll have to see what that looks like when the CSM Codex drops as well. But all of these things are gearing up to potentially have more of a Horde meta, and Unending Swarm does struggle a little bit more in that with the existing builds, because you generally just fall over faster than all of those. Now, the Swarm build has one big advantage over a lot of the other versions, and it's because we have Maliceptors and Exocrines. And if you're teching if you're teching to kill 120 Orc Boys, a Maliceptor's just going to stand there and go, cool, good luck, you win me on 6s still. So I think it's going to be that interesting dynamic to how armies develop. Like you might see Ironstorm still exist purely because it has enough firepower to kill down the Orc units, whilst also not dying on the way back because it is a pile of vehicles. So I think that's going to be interesting as well. And I think Tyranids are slightly well positioned to take that on. It's why it surprises me that fewer people have jumped onto Unending Swarm than that. I think that just maybe going down more of a monster build with say 70 gargoyles as your swarm element, and then playing sort of your normal Tyranids plus monsters might actually be quite a good place to be.
Yeah, I don't fancy taking the 140 gaunt list that I took. 120, sorry, gaunt list that I took to Goonhammer. I would never do that, but I think that you're right. Loads of gargoyles plus monsters could be a vibe. But I guess it's really interesting because you say that that's the edge we have. The Crew could take 120 Crew and Hammerheads, Riptides, just right behind it, and that would be still terrifying. The Orcs, Orcs can't take shooting. I'm not seriously shooting. I'm going to say that now. Don't snip that bit for when I lose to Orcs at the weekend to shooting. But you know what I'm saying? I think
I do.
I think I think the builds that what you've been a pioneer of in terms of triple triple Exocrines really good into the swamps, because all of them are blast, all of them are wounded on 3s, all of them probably rerolling 1s because that's been shot before. So absolutely. Moving on to go on.
So I was just going to say one more with the Swarm. It's why I think, but the other thing as well that our monsters benefit from is they intrinsically just work well on their own. The Exocrine buff is just a great data sheet buff. Like a lot of our power is not built into our stratagems; it's built into what the data sheet is. Like a Maliceptor having a -1 to hit aura if you look at this, there's 3 or 4 melee armies in the top 5. It just sits there going, this feels really good for me, and it just then forms a roadblock that realistically is really hard to kill. Like I'm fairly as an example, when Custodes were the best, I've had a Blade Champion plus 6 Wardens, or the max unit size Wardens, charge into a Maliceptor, pop the +1 to wound, and bounce. And Mega Knobs do that as well, because the -1 to hit aura is big. Like yes, they might get +1 from the War Boss, but they're still only hitting you on 4s. They don't have explosions. They only have 2 attacks per model with the kill saws. Like the defensive profile of the Maliceptor, just the -1 to hit aura, is massive, and then obviously the Exocrine applying plus reroll 1 buffs. It's just built-in value and efficiency that you don't really like. Again, going back to Invasion Fleet, yes, you have an increased damage output because of lethals and sustain, but if you look at the stratagems, none of the stratagems do any bust to your output in shooting. You are very reliant on those base data sheets, which is why I think Tyranids have survived so well at the top, whilst also kind of bringing people up to that 3-win bracket, because we just have good data sheets still.
Very cool. Then we have Marines, so pretty much a 50% win rate against Marines. They're all different flavors and sizes, so you know Marines all day long. Necrons, which we had a 37% win rate into, with the 3rd most played army. And then it's funny, we were talking about World Eaters being, the least compelling of these 5 armies. We had a 23% win rate into World Eaters in the last Dataslate. So that's impressive. and that's going to probably, if they continue, I'll do this now. I've included a very sick animation into the video, guys. So as World Eaters are what they are at the moment, but that's probably going to become CSM, right? That's going to be what CSM is, because if you look at that Raiders detachment, it is fire. That is like World Eaters, slightly slower, but really, really strong. And we're going to see that become very, very popular, I believe. And then finally, we have Grey Knights, which we have a 43% win rate into. Now, Grey Knights have got a lot stronger. I've had some games into them since the Dataslate, and actually, them being able to just take more chaff makes them a lot better. So that's going to be one to watch out for. Cool. But this, I might keep trying to update this because I think it's quite interesting, and it can give everyone an idea of which factions you need to know off by heart. And that's kind of where I see this slide, right? I need to know each of these factions off by heart, what makes them good, what the lists look like, what the rules are, when stratagems are activated, all that kind of stuff, because it's going to give me the edge in that matchup because I'll know what's coming, be able to prepare for it.
The scary thing with all of this is the Orcs one. So, well, for me, in terms of where it's going to end up. So if you look at talking to the likes of Ed and stuff, who have a lot more of a grip on the meta, a lot closer to the heartbeat of it. At the moment, it's only Bully Boys that are putting up results, and whether that's just a bit of a delay to the best players getting on to Green Tide. But it'd be interesting to see if the current results for Orcs is a bit of a veil over actually what the Codex can do, because we haven't seen any of the big players pick up like Green Tide to try and run it at teams or in individuals. It's been Bully Boys, and there also might be a delay in the mech detachment coming through, because again, getting hold of 18 killer cans is not easy.
No, I tell you what would be an interesting way to do that is to have a look at TTS tournaments and see what's winning TTS tournaments.
Yes,
There's
exactly.
no hobby for a TTS.
No, there's not. So that'll be interesting as well. Orcs is kind of my one that's going to be interesting.
I'll take a look at that.
All right. But in CSM, super interesting. I've got one of the guys I play against regularly, who I drew with at the Oxford GT. He is basically a one-trick Chaos Space Marine player, so I'm fairly confident in his views. He hasn't come up with anything specifically yet, but I'm very interested to see where it goes with CSM, because I think they have a couple of detachments which are very strong. Some of them I think we're really good into, and some of them are going to be harder for us to be harder to play against. It's just going to be an interesting one. Like melee focused CSM is actually quite good for us because the Maleceptor is such a roadblock for them.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be the thing, like when CSM chosen triple 5-man chosen with triple Lord was really good. 3 Maleceptors just basically countered it, because yes, they got full rerolls to hit and wound, but it's full rerolls to hit on 4s and 6s to wound, and it just took the damage off a cliff, which meant that instead of 1 tick shot at your monster, it would half the wounds with 5 of Feel No Pain. And then they've used their Demon Hammer power spike, and you'll kill a couple of the chosen on the way back, and then their damage just falls off massively.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, totally agree. I think do any of the stratagems change that? I'm not sure they do, actually, from what I've seen. And if you are interested in hearing about more CSM, we have a show, I think, coming up later this week. Maybe try the 6++ show tomorrow. Might be Wednesday, I can't remember. But myself, Tom, Lee's an awesome CSM player, yes, and Jack will be talking about CSM and the future of that book. We are very hyped about it. I've got to write a list on Fellhammer. I think I'm about there. How does 30 Terminators sound at -1 to wound with a 4-up invuln and the option of a 5-up Feel No Pain? Seems pretty dirty, but hey ho, we'll see. Cool. So we're going to talk about 2 of the lists that did well over the last 2 weeks. This is Larry Oliver. Now, you might have seen this game on War Games Live. He was playing an unfortunate matchup into Chronoptic Court. I think. Yeah,
I thought it was Chronoptic Court, not Awakened Dynasty.
Yes, it was. Yeah, it was. Dynasty. It was Awakened Dynasty.
It was Awakened Dynasty.
Yeah,
which is wild. Because that's not. It's interesting because that's not the best Wraith detachment.
No, absolutely. But what Awakened Dynasty has is tons of regen, right? So you lose stuff, it comes back, and those massive units of destroyers, bringing them back is pretty cool.
Yes.
So this is Larry Oliver, the Richmond GT, and this was the Crusher Stampede list, which I've spelt wrong. Crusher Stampede. Stampede. And that went 4-2. So Larry's list is taking a Neuro Tyrant, Old One Eye, Flying Solo. We've got 10 Gargoyles, a Biovore, 3 Exocrines, 2 Haruspecs, 3 Maliceptor, an Neurolictor, a Non-Emissary, and 3 Raveners. So really interesting list there. I think the spiciness for me, I've just pulled out a couple of things here. Old One Eye being on his own is really cool. Obviously, if he gets hurt, he is hitting on 2s, which is fantastic with his profile. And then if he's below half, he's wounding on 2s, pretty much anything, because he's strength 14. Here's the other thing, though, which is kind of counterproductive, is that he heals D3 wounds in your command phase and your opponent's. So if your opponent does 1 wound to him, in your shooting phase, and then it goes to your turn, he regens that wound. So it's a kind of funny counterintuitive thing. But by the by, he's still really good. A really good rapid ingress threat as well, because he's smaller than all these other guys. So I think a really interesting one. I tried it in my Vanguard Onslaught list, in November time, and he was really good when he got there. But that was the problem. It was just getting him there. We've also got 3 Raveners in here, so obviously you need bodies to do objectives, do secondaries. So that's what they're hanging about for. I think obviously you've got a Biovore to kind of help with that, but I think when you're going to take this many monsters, you really need to have dudes that can go through walls, essentially. And then 1 Neurolictor, same thing again, right? Lone op, so you'll be able to maybe even sit it on your home objective if you're against indirect shooting or whatever. But I think this is just kind of a utility piece. I don't think it's, maybe you'll disagree, John, I don't think it's in there for the battle shocking capabilities that it has. I think it's probably in there to be a lone op that with a 4-up invul and 7 wounds.
I can see it being there for the battle shock, mostly because you don't have it's much easier to contest objectives versus Crusher Stampede because it only has 10 gargoyles, which you don't want to just randomly commit early. You don't have you don't have 2 units of termagants or 3 units of gargoyles or something like this, where you can just run one onto an objective behind a wall. It can't be charged, can't be shot, and your opponent can't just touch something with say 5 OC and out OC a Maliceptor, for example. So there's a potential that it's there for that, but I also think that you almost have to have a lone op in your army with Tyranids just in case your opponent does decide to pull out the indirect guard army, for example. You still have your home objective. So I think there's a bit of a nod to
See, I don't think OC is an issue here, right? So the reason why I say
it can be,
I think you've got the non-emissary, obviously, with 15 OC as soon as it steps on 1. And all these monsters are 4 OC, right? So you are going to go and just stand on objectives with 4 OC. You probably put 2 monsters on every objective for the most part. I did watch one of the games, and he went for the central objective with a non-emissary. He got shot turn 1 and died.
Yeah, that wasn't ideal.
Rough to watch. But yeah, I think I think it is an interesting one. I'm not sure OC is the biggest challenge here, but hey,
you'd be surprised. It's there's a lot of battle line running around at the moment, which isn't ideal. But yeah, no, I think it's more of a bit of a nod to just requiring a lone op for some matchups. Like, I don't think I would ever play a Tyranids army anymore without a lone op of some description, because you do just want that insurance against your opponent bringing triple Exorcist or 2 Exorcists or a couple of Manticores and your Biovore disappearing in a pink mist and you having no way to hold your home objective, which is where those lone ops are just fantastic, and which is why I think that the Lictor does almost beat out the Neurolictor now, because for 55 points, I'm quite happy to sacrifice 55 points to sit on a home objective and do nothing all game. 80 points is a little bit harder.
It's that if something comes within 3 inches of you and then shoots you off that objective, I think that's where it gets challenging. But I get your point, though.
The Neurolictor having the 4-up invuln is interesting. I think most of the time the Neurotyrant probably sits on home objective, and a 3-inch deep strike isn't killing the Neurotyrant. It's an interesting one. I'm kind of not sure on that element. I assume it's partly that, and because Neurolictors still have added value when you do want to go more aggressive with them. Yeah,
I do love when I was playing the Synaptic Nexus build, like an aggressive Neurotyrant's really fun because he's quite slow, but that 18-inch flamer, as soon as you put him in like with angles on a few different places, your opponent is just like, oh my god, I can't go anywhere near that thing, because especially when you give it the enhancement, it's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, Larry did have 6 games here, so he had a double Skyray Tau, which is a choice. The double Skyray seems pretty good, but it's really hard to hide them all. And
Yep.
against all this great shooting, I imagine it's pretty difficult. Double Storm Raven, Iron Storm Dark Angels,
Yes.
which is a list, believe me.
Mm.
And then we've got the Lost to the Awakened Dynasty with loads of destroyers. So if you haven't watched that game, go and watch it on War Games Live. It was a really good game, but it was a pretty rough first turn for Larry. Then he beat T-Sun's Good Stuff, which is not nothing, right? Because
Nope.
Magnus is real, and can definitely take out a monster a turn if they want. We've got the Big Hunt as well, which is quite funny, right? The Big Hunt surely should be good at killing monsters. And if I remember rightly, this was like a significant win for Larry.
Yeah.
I might be remembering that wrong, but I think it was. And then a loss to the triple Land Raider Gladius, which I can imagine being a bit tough when you've not got lethals.
Yeah, it depends on what the Land Raiders are as well.
There was a Crusader, a Redeemer, maybe 2 Crusaders.
How many multi-metals were on them?
Oh, the Crusaders. Was it a Crusader?
Were they Black Templar? Oh, let's have a look.
I can't remember, but they were scary.
Yeah.
And I think I think he had Manius or a.
It was Ultramarines.
It was Ultramarines. It was 100% Ultramarines. Yeah. So overall, though, like, you can't knock the lad. Going 4-2 with Crusher Stampede is really strong.
100%.
And you know what? The Crusher Stampede army roll +1 to hit when you've taken a wound is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as your opponent shoots you, they have to try and kill something essentially. Otherwise, it just hits on 2s. You can't just spread out shooting for a laugh.
Yep.
So it really puts your opponent in an interesting position. Yeah.
I do love this list though. I think it's really cool. It's really
this
nice.
This is a you kind of list.
It's it is. It's really refreshing to see different styles of monster mash coming through. I love monster heavy Tyranids lists. I think they are currently the way to play them. But it's interesting that it was Crusher Stampede that was the route they went, which most people have written off as the worst Tyranids detachment. So props to someone who can go 4-2 with what is widely received as the worst detachment. Is a big props to this player doing that. I was just looking through, like, I think one of the nice things with this detachment is you do get access to effectively tank shock, which is one of the big things that Tyranids
It's
are
worse
missing.
tank shock, isn't it? It's 6 dice.
It is, but a lot of armies at the moment potentially don't like mortal wounds versus just being hit by a Haruspex. So there is that side of it as well. So I'm definitely up for trying this list out when I get round to it. I don't know. I don't own that many monsters of that description. But it's a really interesting list, and actually I quite like Old One Eye in the list just as like that random one-off character, just to kind of be a little bit of a melee threat that people can't ignore.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got Doom Melon entered the chat, and boy has he. A few different comments from the Doom Melon, who I'm playing with at the weekend. He's going to the GT in Wickham that I'm going to. I think it's Wickham.
It is.
But yes,
I might try and sneakily. We might try and sneakily go to High Wycombe on Saturday, so I can randomly drop into TTR and go and see the people doing the RTT there at the weekend, including Davey. Just winding my missus up.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's for the podcast. We need the research value.
Yes, definite research value to be gained.
Yeah, Doomelin pointing out Savage Roar causes battle shocks as well, but again,
it does in the fight phase.
In the fight phase, yeah.
It doesn't help necessarily with you taking objectives off of people, but just having more like Savage Roar gives the target unit -1 to hit, and then if they failed, so it gives a unit -1 to hit, and then if they fail the battle shock, -1 to wound. But if they also fail the battle shock, they're also +1 to wound, because you potentially have that Neurolectra in 12 inches. So it's kind of like you can start to put small combos together to make your generally. Haruspex has some issues with output. Suddenly it's wounding on 3s or 2s. It's quite tasty off of a stratagem as well as a battle shock check.
Yeah, absolutely. And then one thing Doom Melon really well pointing out is that with old one eye, obviously you see him a lot with the other Carnifexes. If you have the other Carnifexes, that means one of them needs to die before you can benefit from the detachment roll.
Yes, it does.
Just one worth pointing out there. Cool.
For sure.
So that is Larry's list there. So well done to Larry going 4-2. All right, let's go to Devin Watkins. So the same event with Assimilation Swarm also going 4-2. Now, first thing to point out, obviously, if anyone has watched the recent episode I did with Michael De La Torre, like this list is so different and really in a cool way. Like it's just great to see this detachment come to life in two different ways. So let's go through it real quick. We've got a parasite with biophagic. I can't remember what the second part of that is, but I believe it's the 9-inch.
Flow.
Yeah. Flow.
Biophagic flow.
Yeah, you have essentially. I think you anyone within any of the harvesters within 9 inches of you have a 12-inch have a 9-inch regeneration aura.
You got it.
Sick. Yes. Then we've got the Swarm Lord. so yeah, there's a vibe having the Swarm Lord. Cool. And then you've got a winged prime with instinctive defense. Is the name of
yes, it is.
Sick. And that is the heroic for free, and you get fights first.
If you're within 6 inches of one or more friendly harvester units.
Yes.
Whilst the bearer, specifically weirdly, the bearer is within one or more friendly harvester units. You can't. He has the prime has to be not the warriors, so the prime has to be within that 6-inch bubble, which makes it slightly harder to use, but it's pretty decent still.
Yeah, so Michael was talking about this on the show we did a couple of weeks ago. Like it was really, really important for him to get his positioning really right. So he decided to use it with Gene Stealers, which is kind of where I'd be more inclined to use it, because the Gene Stealer base is you could turn the guy sideways, get probably another half-inch out of it, and the Gene Stealers, there's more of them. You can easily get into engagement range. So that's where I would be, to be honest. But I can absolutely see the benefit of doing it with warriors. We've then got 3 Haruspecs. So these are all the harvesters. 3 Haruspecs, 2 Psychophage, 3 Pyrovores.
And a Ripper.
And a Ripper. Sorry, yeah, I've put that in the other bit, yeah. So obviously the 3 Haruspecs, big base boys, really doing well for that aura because they're huge. 2 Psychophages, now 95 points for a unit that doesn't... And you know how I feel about Psychophages. I just hate them. They need a new data sheet. And then we have 3 Pyrovores, which I'm a big fan of 3 Pyrovores, by the way. I've been testing that out recently. I'm a big fan in that I want it to be good. Is it good? I'm kind of not really sure on that one. It might be good against all this orc stuff that's coming down the line, but yeah, when they average 12 shots between 3 of them, I'm like, oh, that does not bring joy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, Zoanthropes are not my cup of tea.
Oh, sorry, I was talking about the Pyrovores, but yeah.
Oh, the Pyrovores. So I think potentially now they're too expensive. It's interesting to take a unit of 3. Like a couple of solo ones are easy to hide as well, which is an interesting difference. It's easier to hide a single Pyrovore on an objective to make the most of its regeneration ability, but 3 of them does have a decent amount of output, and it's a fairly scary Overwatch.
Yeah, so this is what I was thinking, right? Because I was trying to take them in a few different detachments, trying to make it work. So 105 points, right, for 15 wounds. That's monster territory, right? And you're not really paying 105 for many monsters. Then you get 3d6 plus 3 flamer shots, which I thought, okay, that's good. And the flamer's good. It's strength 6 with reroll wounds and -1, ignores cover. Like, it does a thing.
Yeah.
But you know the biggest challenge with those 3 is yes, they have the breachable word, but pretty much only in name only, because getting them through a wall is pretty difficult stuff. With a 5-inch move and a base that's about 4 inches long. Like it is difficult.
And no Hive Tyrant to assault move them either. It's pretty scary. These are definitely coming in. I think these are coming in from Rapid Ingress or Strat Reserve.
Ah, interesting. Good shout. Yeah. Because some of those objectives where some of those missions where the side objective is so close to the edge of the board that you can just bring them on and go, haha, this is mine now. That could be quite cool.
Yeah. I definitely think that just going back to the Warriors, it's the Warrior versus Gene Stealer argument is forever and a day going to be a talk amongst Tyranid players. So now the fact that 6 Warriors cost the same as 10 Gene Stealers and the Prime is cheaper, you then have to look at that. It basically means that you get devastating wounds on 1, and you've got a slightly cheaper unit with more sort of raw output of damage 1. So if you look at like the previous meta where it was sort of triple Satan, a lot of 2 up arms, safe Custodes, the fact that you could put dev wounds through, less so against the Custodes, but there's a lot of 2 up saves, potentially more than there is now. The devastating wounds made a big difference in that. Plus you got reroll hits of 1, so you basically never missed, and reroll wounds of 1, which just increased your damage output potentially with them. Plus you got dev wounds and a scout move, a smaller unit. It moved faster. There was a load of things that made it better. This meta potentially with orcs and horde style armies, especially orcs themselves. Melee warriors make a lot more sense now than Gene Stealers do. Mostly because Strength 6, Twin Linked, is a lot of damage. And it's the Strength 6 Twin Linked, so it's 3s re-rolling wounds rather than 5s with Dev.
Strength 5 Twin Linked, right?
Oh, is it Strength 5 Twin Linked?
Yeah.
Right, Strength 5 Twin Linked. It's still Twin Linked. It means you're 4s rather than 5.
Yeah, 100%.
Oh, it's Strength 6. No, it's Strength 5. Melee bar weapons. Yeah, cool. Strength 5. So you've got 6 attacks, so it's 6 of 18. So it's 36 attacks, which explode. You can reroll once to hit with your aggression imperative, but also because this army is geared around keeping that prime near a harvester unit, you have fights first, and fights first on 6 warriors and a prime versus orcs I think is a lot scarier than fights first on a brood lord with 10 Gene Stealers, purely because the wounding is different.
I worry about the base size, man. I think the base size on warriors.
Oh, base size is ridiculous.
Yeah, I think that's what literally is making me, because I think it's very close. I would choose the Gene Stealers over the warriors for the base size, because I think, if you know what objectives are like, they're always hanging out under terrain pieces, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I rolled a 5, but I can't quite get past that wall.
Now against bully boys, I'd prefer the Gene Stealers because the AP is the same and you're wounding because Mega Knobs are TE6.
Yep.
So your Twin Link Strength 5 with no dev wounds versus wounding on 5s, reroll 1s with dev wounds. It's one of those weird ones. I think it's a bit of a choice. Getting the access to the synapse doesn't matter as much in Assimilation Swarm. It's just sort of thinking out loud about things. If it's a nod to Horde armies with Horde orcs, I think that's probably why we're seeing more of that. Plus, getting access to lethal hits as well is also quite a nice one. And lethal hits is much less counterintuitive with warriors versus Gene Stealers. With your biomass being a stratagem, fight phase, you get lethal hits. So you crit on 6s, lethals, and sustained with the prime, whereas you don't necessarily want lethals on the Gene Stealer. So I think it's a slight efficiency for the detachment stratagems, why they've taken that.
Yeah. But, as I say, I think that the key takeaway is you could take either, and you'd be fairly happy with most of it.
Yes.
So then we've also got that Ripper Swarm, which probably just pops up where a harvester is needed or where a secondary is needed. We've also got the Bivor, which pretty much does the same thing.
Going back to the Ripper Swarm, you yeet it into the strongest thing in your opponent's army. It dies. You spend a CP, and you get +1 to wound for the rest of your army.
Yes, that is very true. And then maybe you drop in. Here's my 3 squads of 3 zoanthropes.
So it's weird. There is actually an interesting theory with the army that you could play like a standard Tyranids list with Maleceptors and Exocrines. And then you have like 3 solo spawn, 3 solo rippers, 3 solo pyrovores, and you just throw them at your opponent's big things, and then you start stacking +1 to wound across your opponent's army. So that's a really interesting thing that hasn't really been thought about too much yet with Assimilation.
Yeah, Michael did it with the, I think, Muculid Spore.
Yes, things like that.
He also did it to regenerate his unit, I think, as well. So, no, it's super handy. Tell you what, though, that sounds crappy on Purge the Foe. I hate that.
That's what keeps us in check.
And we'll go into that in a sec, actually, because we'll speed through this now, because we're just going to touch on what list I'm taking at the weekend. But John's list design has rubbed off on me, and now with Purge the Foe in mind, I'm going to go with his ways. So we've got 1 Exocrine, 3 the warriors, like we've said, 6 Tyrant Guard. Sorry, 6 warriors, 6 Tyrant Guard as well. Like and that's something else that I think is really impressive about this list. There's just so much stuff. 3x3 zoanthropes and a lictor. So some of the spikes here, we've got a parasite. So I think, like we were talking about before, a lone op, And I think what you're doing with the Parasite is you're saying, yeah, the 4 up invuln and 7 wounds is not for me. Give me 12-inch move. And of course, it will probably be in a safe-ish place because it's got this biophagic flow. So it's going to be hopefully 12 inches back from the main lines, but enough within your harvester units to actually trigger the biophagic flow. There's a lot of stuff here, as I've mentioned already. Like, there's tons of wounds to get through, and all those wounds come back if you've got a harvester next to them. And again, just to add, this is very different to what Michael did, so check out that video if you're interested in the Assimilation Swarm. If this doesn't tickle your fancy, that list might do. The run. So Devin went on a good old submarine trip here by losing the first 2 games and then winning the next 4. So he beat a proper good Black Templars list, like a really good Crusaders list. Then he's played Ulkayun, and let's all pour one out for Tetras.
No, let's not.
Let's not, because
Let's not. Don't worry, they will not be missed.
He then went into a Imperial Knights list with 3 big and 3 little, which I think I can see us doing very well here. Double Skyray again, so it's the chap who Larry played previously.
Oh, no.
So he went into double Skyrays. And then a strong Canoptic Court list, which he then also beat, which was very, very good. And then World Eater's good stuff and a Demon Prince, because a Demon Prince I don't think belongs in World Eater's good stuff. So, a really varied run of games there, and some strong performances as well. So well done to Devin there. Well done indeed. So yeah, there's our 2 players that went 4-2. Hopefully in 2 weeks' time, guys, we're going to bring to you some more absolute belters.
Just one thing to remember.
Go on, John.
For those of you, the Parasite makes harvester units.
It does make harvester units. So, well,
It's
okay.
not the worst thing in the world, but it does actually make harvester units.
John, it makes harvesters. If you get into combat, if your opponent has a shit unit, then you get your Parasite into combat with it. Then it hits with its 1 extra attack,
Yes.
which then wounds, which then they fail, which then if they fail, you get the D3. Yeah, it's happened to me once in 10th.
It's funny.
It felt amazing. It felt so good. But yeah. Cool. So I just wanted to touch on the list I'm taking this weekend. I'm very excited to bring it. And look, there's.
You can read it to me, Davey. I'm not looking.
All right. Okay. Oh no, you're not coming, are you? You're not at the event.
No, I'm not at the event. I'm just not looking. I
want
to hear it.
You want to see my wonderful Morlock, right? All right. So
wild. I actually think it's a pretty. To be fair, I actually think the Morlock's an interesting model to be playing.
I've been testing it, and so guys, I'm gonna preface this list. I bought 3 Morlocks because they're good, because I was going to try and use them in this really cool list I saw Eric Lathuris use. Turns out I'm not quite talented enough to use that list, and especially when that list was developed for a team's environment. So I tried, and I just could not get it to work. So I'm stuck with these 3 Morlocks that are just burning a hole in my model cabinet. So I've said, no, I'm going to get them out. We're going to use them. So I've used John's list as a base, and then I've just basically crowbarred these 2 Morlocks. So let's go through the list. Hive Tyrant were perfectly adapted. Now, John, give me the pointers if I am missing anything here, but I love this because it's going to give me a reroll in my turn and my opponent's turn. So on their turn, I can reroll a save, which means that this Hive Tyrant is much more durable.
Yes.
And then on my turn, it's probably going to be rerolling an advance roll to keep that aura of assault weapons nice and far along. Is there any other reason I would use it in my turn?
Reroll, hit, wound, charge, or assault, basically.
With my heavy venom cannon.
Yeah, it comes up mostly. It mostly comes up as a reroll assault move or reroll charge move.
Nice.
But being able to, say for example, you do hit combat and you roll a 1 to hit, and you know you need to try and kill the thing, just having that inbuilt reroll doesn't hurt on that 1 thing. You hit on a 2, so you get a reroll in combat, but mostly, it's. I find it's mostly reroll a advance roll or reroll a charge roll mostly. But again, you are going to get a lot of mileage out of it. This is why I love it so much, and this is why it stacks really nicely with the list. So the reason I love perfectly adapted is, in theory, you can reroll 4 invulnerable saves per turn. In theory, if you have 2 CP, because you get 3 per phase. So you get your perfectly adapted reroll, you get your command point reroll, you get your free stratagem reroll. basically what I found is as soon as I tell my opponents my Hive Tyrant's re-rolling 3 invulnerable saves, they just don't bother shooting it
I'm
anymore.
just going to write that down, John.
So basically, what does perfectly adapted do? Well, it allows me to re-roll It allows me to re-roll a save, which can be an armor or an invulnerable save. He also then has a free stratagem for a battle tactic, which includes a command point re-roll, so it can either be 2 re-rolls and a 5 with invuln, or 3 invulnerable saves. And at that point, your opponent's like, how much do I need to shoot at it to even get through? And they'll shoot something else instead. And I agree. I do understand perfectly adapted is a really cool stratagem, giving you a free 5 up feel no pain. You give double thing. At the same time, for 15 points less, I can make my Hive Tyrant more reliable moving, charging, and basically my opponent just doesn't bother shooting it anymore.
Guys, this is hot shit what Johnny's spitting right now. He's just saved you all, like what, 15 points? Like you should write in to the. If we had an email, I would say write in with your praise. Cool. Then we're rocking Old One Eye, who I'm hoping my TOs allow me to use him with 6 eyes because my Carnifex has 6 eyes. But we'll see. So we've got Old One Eye. He's going to be leading 2. Oh my god, I haven't put them on here. 2 Carnifexes, but I do have 2 Carnifexes in the list. I did wonder why there was not much stuff here. There are two Carnifexes in Old One.
Good. What are they armed with?
So all Death Spitters.
Interesting. Okay.
So I had those. I had all Death Spitters in 9th edition. I tried it in then actually, but now obviously they're so good with the exploding 6s, etc., etc. So big fan of them, and they just what I like about them, one of the same reason I like them with the Morlock. Same reason is they just diversify the attack profiles of this list. So you've got Maleceptors and Exocrine, which are all like high strength. -2, -3, 3 damage. But actually what these guys do is do plenty of attacks. So many attacks. And -2, 1 damage, which is really cool. So then we've got 10 Gargoyles. I like 10 Gargoyles. It depends on the opponent. But, if you get that cleanse turn 1 or something like that, just being able to advance them onto 2 objectives and do that action is really nice. You can also bring them down from reserve, just keep them as a threat. I like them in priority targets to bring down really late and just then go, move on to 2 objectives if I've gone second. So loads of ways to use them in that sense. I just think they're great. We've got a Biovore doing Biovore things, 3 Exocrine because they're great, 5 Gene Stealers. Now, John, I've used these a couple of times, and the way that I like them, but tell me if I'm wrong, is essentially they peel a threat off a Maleceptor or someone like that. So something's gone into my Maleceptor that just has bounced off. The Gene Stealers walk in, peel it away, and then overrun back behind a wall.
Yeah, they can do that. They provide you turn 1 charge threat on Dawn of War deployment, or they provide you with realistic turn 1 charge threat into your opponent's squishy units. They can be used to hit, especially if you go first, they can be used to hit a squishy front and then pile into tanks at the back, and they'll then survive. It then means that it's stuck for another turn. It gives you a bit of. They're really good. I find them really good at making space, so I've always liked them. Whereas I found that without them, your opponent's a little bit more freely going to move their chaff and rubbish forward and try and tout your Maleceptors. But like say, 5 Gene Stealers will pick up most stuff that's not a dedicated unit.
Yeah, absolutely. Paul Evans here, John. Mind blown. Going to try perfectly adapted myself now.
Yeah, I do stand by. I think it is the best enhancement in the Tyranid Codex. I think it's that good. I get that people like adaptive biology thinking, I get free feel no pain, but when you have all of your free stratagems and you get to start doing all these re-rolls and advanced moves and saves, I just find for 15 points it is such a good value efficiency enhancement that I don't know, we all like re-rolls and stuff, but I just think it's so I do, and I'm sure people won't agree with me, and I'm happy for that, but
I don't think anyone could disagree with you, John, based on what you've just said. Because
a lot of people default to adaptive biology because it's like, oh, my Hive Tyrant has a 5 up feel no pain. Cool, absolutely agree. But at the same time, that Hive Tyrant is slightly less reliable.
Yeah, if it's 16 wounds, I'd say maybe we're talking. But it's only got 10, right?
Yes.
So, someone could put that much damage through quite easily in a turn. And you're rolling 5 up feel no pains. But, all of a sudden it could just pop off and be gone. Whereas if you're re-rolling 4 ups, like you're playing Custodians at that point, and we all know how that goes.
Absolutely.
We've then got 2 Maleceptors, which we've talked about already. You know how we're all big fans of Maleceptors. And then the 2 Morlocks and a Paravor. So if you don't know what a Morlock does, guys, a Morlock comes in 9 inches away from your opponent's stuff and then triggers within every unit within 12 inches. So what that means is they roll a dice for every unit within 12 inches of it. On a 2 up, on a 1, nothing happens. 2 to 4, they take D3 wounds. And on a 5 or 6, they take flat 3 mortal wounds and take a battle shock test. So if you rapid ingress this, it could, and I say this in inverted commas, could stop someone cleansing, stop someone doing engage.
Wow, I didn't think about that.
Stop someone doing all these different things. Also, battle shocks them for your entire turn. It's like a mini shadow in the wall. It was really good in Synaptic because if someone failed, you could then press the button to just do like 4 mortal wounds to them from the strat, which was really nice. But what I found that I really like them for at the moment while playing Invasion Fleet is they are always alive at the end of the game. They're always just bothering people at the end of the game with 18 attacks, which probably have lethals or sustained. 18 attacks, and then they have that random attack at the end, which sometimes matters. But they're just a big bunch of wounds. So for me, I'm willing to try them. I think they make your opponent either your opponent forgets about them and they do some cool stuff, or they panic about them and kind of try and screen out half the board, and then you shoot them with all your guns. And then a Paravor because he's the Maleceptor's best friend.
He certainly is.
So yeah. That is the list that I'm taking. So, any other tips from me, John, before we close the show out for how to play this list?
Don't be afraid to push forward with the Hive Tyrant.
Well, you know what? Actually, one of the things I've really struggled with, and I think that I've lost in my practice games, is I've not been aggressive enough. And I think it is. I'm so used to with Exocrines, like sticking a little head around the corner. Maleceptor, well, he's just going to kind of tour that objective, and I think that's what's losing me those games.
I think the perfectly adapted Hive Tyrant does have a little bit more of a place in the midboard. Just it has a bit of resilience, better movement, better likelihood to get into combat. The Hive Tyrant's still slapping combat. They're not bad by any means. 6 attacks, 9 -2/3 with twin links is pretty reasonable when you have exploding 5s in melee. That's the other thing you've got to remember. You can give the Hive Tyrant exploding 5s for free. Makes that thing hit like a truck, especially with sustain. But it's like the first couple of turns is kind of like move stuff forward, try and get lines, try and get angles, and then 3, 4, and 5 is just dump monsters on objectives because your opponent has to start exposing their anti-tank stuff. You will generally be able to pick up their anti-tank with your Exocrines or your old one-eye and Carnifexes. You obviously need to decide what's going in Strat Reserve. I would normally recommend old one-eye going into Strat Reserve. Him hitting a 9-inch charge out of Strat Reserve is pretty nice.
Yeah.
Whereas so basically the list I'm currently working on designing at the moment is pretty much similar to this, except I've got no Morlocks, but I've got a third Maleceptor. But I've got the old one eye and his 2 Carnifex buddies. I'm trying out potentially the Devourer version just to see if it will do enough damage to orcs. Versus taking the Death Spitters with slightly better AP. So it's kind of like one of those things. I love this. I love this design of Invasion Fleet. I think it's really solid, and I think it's one of those ones where the more you play it, the more rewarded you'll get. You'll also find you actually kill things with this detachment.
Yeah, man. Like the practice games I've had where things die is just the most fulfilling experience of my life. After playing Wild Eaters and then coming back to play like some Tyranid lists that can't wound anything, I'm like, oh god, how do I get through all this stuff? But yeah, it's definitely good.
And don't be afraid to move your Exocrines forward with your Maleceptors. As long as they're within the 6-inch aura, they'll be -1 to hit. And an Exocrine is still hard to kill in melee for most stuff that's -1 to hit. And if it's below half strength and -1 to wound, you're just laughing. Like
it's just getting it to somewhere where it'll be able to shoot something once something else has tagged it. And I think that's the trick with it. It's like, yes, you can be aggressive with them, but as long as it's going to have another target in your turn. Because the worst thing is like not having a target.
Yeah, as long as you have line of sight to the central objective, you're pretty golden with it. That's what I've always found. But yeah, I would, because you've got a couple of RTTs, I would look to try and be a little more aggressive than passive. Try and limit test it. Like, sure, you want to do well, but the RTTs
I would always feel if I went to an RTT, it's more of a let's limit test this a bit. If you don't get to, for those who may not get to play too many games,
100%.
it's limit testing. Like you will get a number of points for the ITC and stuff, the UKTC from it, but it won't be the same points as a super major or major, where you want to then know how to play the army and stuff. So I definitely recommend just try and limit test it and see what happens. And let me know how the Morlocks go, because I'm super intrigued by them.
Yeah, we'll see how they do, man. We'll see how they do. So I'm excited to see how the event goes. I won't be winning the second one or the Sunday because I'm the TO. So I'd feel pretty bad if I won. Plus, I've won a bunch of those RTTs anyway, so it's not something I'll probably just go hell for leather with it at that one.
Definitely.
So thank you for watching, guys. I just want to quickly run through some of the comments because we had a little bit of a blitz there, real quick, because we want to get off to bed.
Yes, definitely.
So Doom Melon won Purge last night, got first turn, literally didn't move a thing. So I actually tried that this week against a guard player, and he just got an angle on my Neuro Tyrant, and then he won by 1,000,000 points at the end. But I was trying the same thing. I genuinely think that's a tactic on Purge, is just to go, I'm going to hide everything, and you can come onto the objective, that's fine, but at least you're not getting 8 points turn one. By Tetras from Doom Melon as well. See you later.
Yeah, they will not be missed. Anyone who misses Tetras are not welcome to the Bugwatch channel anymore, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, Doom Melon, if it makes a ripper, the opponent should concede the game. Total agree. Michael DLT, love for the Morlock. Yeah, boy! Big fan. Adaptive Biology gives a chance against non-attack mortal wounds, Librarian Grenade, when you pop the stratagem. Very good point.
Yep, it is a point. It is a point.
Niche circumstances, I would say.
They're fewer than you think, and to be fair, at that point they're also targeting the Hive Tyrant, and the Maliceptors are still alive. The Maliceptors do have the better output, just as a thought on the side. But I do agree that there is a benefit for adaptive biology.
Doom Melon waiting for Tervagans to drop to 170 points. Yeah. I don't think... I would love that to happen. I don't think it will. I think they're actually secretly low-key good. I used to put the -1 to -1 damage stratagem enhancement on them in Synaptic, and boy, does that guy stick around. Kraken Matt, great point here. The Discord link is invalid. I will do my best to change that today, mate. Here to Davies 2 Morlocks. Thanks, James. Got a double tournament soon. Vanguard, Onslaught, and Tau. Fallback and charge, and Tau should do well. All right, you're playing doubles. Yeah, yes. Okay.
Tau shooting will definitely make up for the lack of damage in Vanguard Onslaught. I thoroughly agree with that one. That's a pretty good combination.
No Tetras though. No Tetras.
Stealth suits are good though.
Stealth suits be good. They'd be good. All right, and Paul, I think this is the best way to end the show. Is great show as always. Thank you, Paul. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much, Paul.
We love doing this, and we only do it because you guys show up. So thank you very much for being here. That will be all the show for today. Please come and join our Discord. Leave some comments. I want to hear what you're thinking about the show and what you think about Tyranids. I would love you guys to, because me and John, we get together and say what we're going to talk about in this show. If you can give us some ideas what you want to hear, we're all for it. We definitely want to hear what you guys are saying
100%.
and what you guys are thinking. And so with that in mind, put that in the comments, and we'll see you next time.